Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 219th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. We got a big program today. We had a big national, probably global rally on Saturday. Millions or hundreds of thousands of people all over the world protesting the insanity in the White House. And we're going to have TATANKA BRICCA talk to us about that. And the great Clifford Tasner is with us from Americans for Democratic Action. Mike Hersh, my recent. David Saltman's with us. Got some great ideas, as always. So we're going to have kind of a free-for-all talk about these rallies and what they really meant, if anything, and where we're going to go heading forward. And we're also going to be joined by Joe Mangano. We've been talking about presenting a program for monitoring health around nuclear plants. And I actually, amazingly enough, well, when Joe comes on, I'll tell you. Second hour, we have two really of America's greatest advocates for homeless people, Reverend Donald Whitehead and SUSIE Shannon here in LA. That's going to be at the top of the second hour. Charlie Light is going to come on and talk to us very briefly about a film we're showing in Santa Monica tonight. The question about Bernie's event, which Bernie and AOC are going to be speaking here in LA at some point soon, as is Jamie Raskin, who's coming out here. So we got a ton of stuff to deal with, and we're going to jump right in with Clifford Tasner and then TATANKA BRICCA to talk about the big rallies. Clifford is the head of the LA County Americans for Democratic Action and was the opening act at the Pershing Square rally in LA. And what we want to do here is have a roundtable and talk about what we really think about what happened on Saturday and what its impact might be, because we have been talking about, tying people together from these rallies. We don't know if names were taken or what, but Clifford, why don't you tell us about your performance at the Pershing Square rally and what you thought of it?
Well, first of all, I want to point out that we're seeing this fascist oligarchy being built in America. It's a project that's been going on since 1971 with the when Lewis Powell promulgated the Powell Memorandum, where he laid out a plan for corporations to completely take over America, take over our politics, take over our media, take over our education system. And that's kind of where we are at now. Everything that the Republicans, the conservatives have been doing since 1971 has been leading up into this moment. And unfortunately, the Democrats over time became the other corporate party. We have two corporate parties in America. We have a corporate centrist party and a corporate fascist party. And, we've got Hakeem Jeffries saying that everybody should just relax and let the Republicans self-destruct on their own. And remember how much money he gets from AIPAC, how much money he gets from corporations. Chuck Schumer, in fact, instead of opposing a horrific, government spending bill, he endorsed it and supported it, and it was our one place where he might have gotten some leverage. So the Democratic Party leadership, sadly, and I'm a registered Democrat. I'm a member of the County Central Committee. The Democratic Party leadership is in the pocket of large corporations and is quiescent at this time. So no one but us is going to save us from what's going on. This is up to us. We have to take to the streets. We have to protest, and the time to protest is right away. It's not to wait till they completely finish taking over every aspect of our society. It's now. It's now, and that's why we're getting out there. And it was, Pershing Square is a pretty good turnout. I do political satire. I was known as Billionaires for Bush back in the Bush era. We've been doing billionaires in various forms, and now I'm calling us Trillionaires for Trump. And I'm generally showing up alone because there's not that many people who are trillionaires. And I do my bit, I rap a little bit, I got my top hat on, and I talk about how, we're not trillionaires yet, but Elon's busy. He couldn't come out today because Elon's in Washington right now, and he's taking a chainsaw to every government service and government program and social program that makes your short, miserable lives just a little less short and a little less miserable. And so, the more money he cuts, the more public servants that he puts out on the street, the more money that we billionaire trillionaires will be able to get in the form of a humongous tax cut, and then we truly will become trillionaires. So I do a bit of that kind of thing, and
Maybe we'll have you to do that bit another
yeah,
time. You can
oh, yeah, absolutely.
wear your top hat, and
Yeah, yeah.
I will want you to drive into the picture in your Tesla.
I
So,
will do that. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, the Cybertruck. We make a lot of jokes
oh
about
my
this.
God,
You
that
know,
Cybertruck was perfectly designed for death squads. I
it
mean,
is
that
like
Cybertruck just shouts out of a
fascism.
death
It is
squad.
it is fascism embodied as a vehicle. And the other thing I talk about is how immigrants bring all their culture and traditions to America. And if they're white Christian people, we welcome them. However, I point out that Elon Musk is an immigrant. Elon Musk is an immigrant from apartheid South Africa, and he's bringing his culture, he's bringing his traditions, he's bringing apartheid right here to the United States of America. As if we didn't have it already. But and I explained that apartheid is really just a fancy schmancy foreign word, and that's really what it is. And so that's where we're at. We are basically looking down the muzzle at a fascist oligarchy. And there are a lot of people. As I talk to people, if you're a person of color in America, if you're a trans person, if you're an immigrant, even not necessarily undocumented immigrant, if you're a dark skinned immigrant, you've been experiencing fascism already. It's already been happening for you. But now it's going to take the rest of us. And so we all have to stand up. We all have to fight. We have to protect the undocumented people we know. We have to stand up for the trans people we know. We don't need to take the route that Gavin Newsom is taking, where he's trying to make sure that Americans know that he's really actually a conservative and not a progressive from crazy blue California. He's got this radio show. He's amplifying the voices of Steve Bannon and various hateful people, and he's trying to rebrand himself because he thinks that'll get him elected president. We do not need that for our president. People want somebody who will stand up and fight. And in fact, I think that's really what Cory Booker was doing. Cory Booker is probably going to run for office in a couple of years again. He's going to run for president, and he's recognizing, he's looking at the landscape, and all the other Democrats are cowering under the desks. It's time to fight. So he stood up for 25 hours. I guess he was wearing adult diapers or something, and he's trying. I think
he borrowed one from Trump.
But I'm glad. I'm glad more people should be doing that. They should stop the business of the Senate. They should have stopped the business of the Senate before a single one of these horrific people were confirmed to cabinet posts. They should not a single one of them should not a single Democrat should have voted for anything the Republicans do unless they come up with a bill for complete single payer health care. When the Republicans come up with single payer health care, when the Republicans come up with a bill to absolutely tax billionaires out of existence, I say the Democrats, you have my permission to vote for it. But short of that, everyone should be in opposition. And if our elected officials are not going to be in opposition, we have to be. And when it's time for primary season, it's time to primary every single elected official, every single Democratic official who's in the pay of corporate America, and letting all this happen without standing up and fighting out. So there we are.
There you go. Clifford Tasner is the chair of the Southern California Americans for Democratic Action. And Clifford, how many people were at the rally at Pershing Square, and what would you estimate their average age to be?
I'm guessing there at least, I thought there were about 2,500, maybe 5,000 people. There were a lot of people there. Unfortunately, the problem with Pershing Square, it's like every number of years, the city rebuilds Pershing Square. Back about 2000, when we were protesting George Bush, it seemed like we could get everybody into the park. Now there's a big area of astroturf in the middle of the park that's off limits. So we had people near the stage. We had, maybe 500 people near the stage who could hear what we were doing. And then after I did my bit, I performed, I walked around the park to just kind of get the vibe and saw all these fun people with great signs. I really loved the sign that says Third Reich, with a big poop emoji. And I'm checking people out. But once you got away from the stage to the back part of the park, you couldn't hear anybody on this. Just too bad, because there were a lot of
Wow. Well, I understand a lot of the rallies, and if you were at a rally Saturday, we do want you to give us a report. My understanding is that a lot of the rallies didn't have stages. But and also, did they take names? Was there a way to collect people's contacts for further
I
follow-up?
don't know that that happened because I wasn't one of the organizers of the event. I
Or
was brought in to perform.
in
Oh,
their
what do we got here?
position. I don't believe
No,
so.
Oh, good for them. That's great. That's great. Texans succeed.
But you can hear them.
Okay. Well, that's for our radio audience. But thanks, Steve, for that. Let me go to TATANKA BRICCA, and then we'll go to Mike Hersh. And listen, again, if you were at a rally, we want your report. Steve, our great engineer, is putting up various signs. But my understanding, a lot of these rallies, people just showed up. There was no stage and did whatever. TATANKA, Clifford's a tough act to follow, but go ahead, please.
Yeah, well, Clifford's right. We all need to stand up now. The action is now. In addition to just showing up briefly in San Jose and then in Santa Cruz, I got some great texts from my son, my grandson, a couple of brothers in San Francisco, Marin County, Athens, my son and his wife from Tucson, where there was a 1 mile down the main street going into Tucson, just filled with people, street-wide. My oldest grandson from the Bahamas, where he's going to be sailing off to Tunisia, but he had a sign on the sloop, and they were celebrating and talking to locals there. I want to talk about what we need to anticipate coming next. And we're all out there for hands off, great slogan, precipitated by Elon Musk and the Trillionaires. But most of you probably already saw this story, but I'm going to repeat it because I think it's worth, if you saw Rachel Maddow's this week, the ridiculous real story behind the tariff plan that turned Donald Trump into a global disaster. And if we had a hand, I'd probably, maybe half of you hadn't. I mean, Sluggo hadn't heard it, so I thought it's instructive. Okay, so how did he get his tariff idea? In his first campaign for the presidency, he didn't have any economic advisors, so I told his son-in-law Jared to find him an economic advisor. Jared goes on Amazon looking through books, not to read them, just to see what cool title he can find, and he sees a book by Death by China, co-authored by this guy by the name Peter Navarro. So he cold calls him and talks him up and basically invites him to be one of the first economic advisors for Trump, not knowing anything about him really. But he was backed up in his book, which he wrote, a pro-tariff guy, right-wing guy. The backup was some name by the name of Ron Vera, V-A-R-A, that he quotes half a dozen or a dozen times in his book, this real expert, who turns out, when people go to find the email address, it's a non-existent, it doesn't belong to anyone called Ron Vera. And it turns out that Ron Vera is a creation of Peter Navarro. It doesn't exist, right? So made up of a fictional person, invented the name, which is a, what do you call it? When you transfer, oh God, I forget the name. Anyway, Ron Vera, all the initials in your name into another name. So he took his last name and he made Ron Vera out of it. Anagram, right? So he gets the idea. Trump has this guy from a fake email from a fake person, and that's the person who's advising him and has sent the global markets teetering and countries realigning their global positions. So remember, Trump found his economic roundtable. One of the first things he did, he founded an economic roundtable in the beginning of 2017. And they came back to him in short order and said, hate is a bad brand for our companies, and it should be a bad brand for the country. Trump's response, dissolve them. What do they know? All right. So it's been his first Secretary of State. I mean, he had Rex Tillerson, the ex-CEO of Exxon, a baby drill guy. He manages to leave and basically says, I can't work with him. He's a moron. He's a effing moron. So over time, Trump dumbs down everyone around him because he projects he's the smartest guy. I think he knows he's not, definitely. So he projects he's the smartest guy in the room. So now we have a bunch of incompetence at virtually every position of his government. Now, what are they going to do next? Okay. He can't really, on this tariff thing, the damage has been done. I mean, Canada has already got contracts with Japan and China for oil that would have gone to us. And Europe is making their own plans. Everybody is making their own plans. This guy is not reliable. His word can go one way, it can go another way. So he's basically destroyed trust. So he's painted himself into a corner. We're in an existential crisis as a nation with climate change, with potential nuclear war, with all kinds of domestic problems, with potential mass deportation of millions of people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, people losing jobs right and left. What does any president of the United States, regardless of policy, when he gets painted into a corner, what does he do?
He blows up the world.
He creates another false flag of one kind or another to go to war with the real enemy and distract us and get special war powers. So I think we need to be prepared, and we need to come up with an education plan for our people and for the rest of the nation when he does predictably what he's going to do. It's his only way out. He's painted himself into this corner. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but we have to plan for it. And next week, I will present what I think is a logical plan. I spent most of the day on Saturday at Google, where Danny Sheehan of the New Paradigm Institute and Romero Institute was asked to speak. And we discussed something that is going on among the panoply of potential false flags that Trump is choosing for, and some of the word in Washington about what might be the most effective. The one that could be the umbrella one, which would be not only national but global in scope. And it's going to take some thought, but suffice to say, it's very urgent that we organize and we be as creative as possible, and that we come up with solutions that anticipate the predictable response of this administration.
Right. One thing, you're 100% right, and I assume among the likely suspects for our next war would be extraterrestrials. But, that's another discussion. But, and then there's Grant Fenwick. I don't know how many of you saw The Mouse That Roared from about 50 years ago, but that's a country that attacked us so that we could defeat them and get foreign aid. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll see. Mike Hersh, you had a hand, and Ruth Strauss.
Yeah, thanks, Lago. I did attend one of the rallies. There wasn't really much of a program. It was mainly we held up signs on both sides of a very busy road in Maryland, in the suburbs of D.C. Downtown in D.C., there was a much bigger rally that did have a lot of speakers. And if you go on YouTube and you put in hands off, you can find videos of all these different rallies all across the U.S. And there were also several in Europe and I think in some other places around the world. So you were absolutely right, Fluggo. This was a global protest of 1 million people or more. And there were well over 1,000 different events, maybe more than 15,000. I'm not sure offhand. If anyone knows, please feel free to either drop that into the chat or let us know. But this was a remarkable expression of disapproval for Trump, Musk, and what they're doing with what was at best a razor-thin electoral victory. Certainly in the Electoral College, in the popular vote, in several of the key states, and in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. And they're, the Trump horde is taking this as some kind of a mandate. And at one time or another during the campaign, they have mentioned a lot of these crazy ideas that they're foisting on us, and then they would walk them back and deny them. They certainly repudiated the Project 2025, which is clearly the blueprint of Trumpism 2.0. And by and large, people do not like it. Even people who voted for Trump are saying, I didn't expect to get this. So Tatanka, you're absolutely right. This is a moment where we can rise up and resist, express our disapproval, refuse to cooperate with it. And as far as Sluggo, you asked a very good question. Did people take names? Well, aside from the security state, which probably took a lot of people's names for not for positive purposes, I had to sign up to figure out where the event was going to be. They got my phone number and my email address, and I'm going to find out where those phone numbers and emails went and what the follow-up is going to be. Because as we've said several times on this Zoom, it's great to come out and show that you support something or don't. But if it's nothing more than a photo op, then there's no real change involved. And we do need, this time more than at any time in our recent history, we need to do more than just show up, even if showing up is 90% of I guess, being there. But and just I'd like to close with this: those cyber trucks are four-wheel fascism, and it's time to ride fascism out of town.
Right, but remember, don't burn your Tesla. That the lithium in the Tesla batteries is really toxic. We don't want to do that. And also, I think Tesla himself. I mean, Nikola Tesla was a real person. I think he should come back from the grave and demand they remove his name from the company. I mean, he was a good, honorable, decent guy, Nikola Tesla. Ruth Strauss, our resident cardiologist. Let's get you unmuted here. Again, if you were at any of the rallies, you want to give us a report, please do, and we'll go back to Clifford. But Ruth, go ahead, please.
Okay, great. First of all, I'm glad that you all mentioned Rachel Maddow. I'm sure a lot of people know that she's doing the first 100 days. And if you listen every night, she is just on it. I mean, she lists every single thing that Trump has done, and it's been amazing. She's kept up with everything. I was at the Culver City one, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people lining the street, both sides of the street and the median strip, and cars were just going by honking, and so it was great. So I was real pleased about that. The thing that I'm not pleased about, that I heard on Thom Hartmann today, is that the New York Times, well, the Washington Post and the New York Times did not do any front page stories. The story about the demos from the New York Times was on page 18. I mean, I have never, I've hated the New York Times ever since Judith Miller, or whoever she was, did that, bullshit about BS about the war on Iraq.
Right.
But anyway, page 18. I mean, that is disgusting. Apparently there was one tiny little picture of a demonstration on the front page, but nothing, and apparently the same for the Washington Post. So there you've got it. All the cowards are lining up. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you. LYNN Feinerman,
and Dr. Ruth, if you could get Rachel Maddow to give us a mention as good as the mention you just gave her on our Zoom, that would be great. She's a little bigger than we are, and we'd love to catch up.
Yeah, great. LYNN Feinerman, you were at the rally in San Rafael?
Yep. We had over 5,000 people. That's according to a police report. And I had a long talk with a guy who told me that it was the first demonstration he'd ever been to in his life. He was 54. He was a cancer survivor. He was deathly afraid that he was not going to be able to manage if he lost any kind of Medicare or Medicaid, and also was deeply concerned about Social Security. I think that we have some issues that can unite us all. And I think that they are, in particular, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. I think everyone is appalled and very worried about themselves, whether they be Republican, Democrat, or something else.
Well, here, since you've raised the issue, I want to read this. This is Donald Trump's verbatim. It's up on the screen, but we're on the radio also. So This is Donald Trump's verbatim response. Harris Faulkner of Fox News asked Trump, what do you think they need right now from you? What do you think the protesters want? And here's Donald Trump's verbatim response. I'm not making this up. It's on the screen, but you in Radio Land need to hear what our president had to say about the protests. Quote, protesters for different reasons. You're protesting also because, they just didn't know. I've watched very closely. Why are you here? They weren't really able to say, but they were there for a reason, perhaps. But a lot of them really were there because they're following the crowd. A lot of them were there because what we witnessed was a terrible thing. What we saw was a terrible thing. And we've seen it over the years. We haven't, this one was one horrible example, but you've seen other terrible examples. You know that better than anybody who would know it, and I know it. I've seen it too. I've seen it before I was president. I've seen it. I think it's a shame. I think it's a disgrace, and it's got to stop. That was kind of like, John Kennedy saying, ask not what you can do for your country, or ask not what your country can do for you. But anyway, so that's our leader. Does anybody else who was at a rally, Clifford, you want to make another quick talk, and then we'll go to Amila, who hasn't spoken, and then TATANKA again. Clifford, you're muted. Now you're not. Hold on.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Are we there? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, so yeah, my Zoom froze for a second, what you don't want to have happen. So I want to just mention about LA Times coverage. After I performed, a guy from the LA Times, a reporter, took down my information, and in the evening online version of the LA Times, there was a fairly decent article about the rally at Pershing Square, and they even mentioned, like in one set, they said, oh, there was some political street theater there too. There was somebody dressed up as Uncle Sam, and there was a woman in a skeleton outfit with Donald Trump painted on her dress, and then some fellow with a ponytail and a top hat calling himself Trillionaires for Trump. And I was like, okay, that's great. But the next morning, the LA Times, that was not the article that ran. The only coverage we got in the LA Times was on the front page of the calendar section. The California section. And it was an article about the national protests that should have been on the front page of the first section, because it was an article mentioning all the different rallies all over the country and barely any mention of ours. So, Patrick Soon-Shiong is doing a great job of owning up to the Trump administration as well.
Well, but whoever called these rallies, there's no follow-up. Once again, it's just a giant photo op.
Right.
What's going to come of it? What's the follow-up?
Well, I think that people are energized and people are engaged, and they're going to do this more than once. In fact, I've been an activist in Los Angeles for many years. I've been an activist my entire adult life. I moved out here in 1987 and immediately got involved in the pro-choice movement and have been very involved. And, a lot of the time, like back in the early 2000s, the aughts, I'd go to rallies, I'd go to protests, and I would know, I know 50, 60, 100 people there. I'm actually glad to say that when I walked through the crowd, I ran into maybe a handful of people that I knew, and so many others were people I didn't know. There were a lot of young people there, and I'm just glad to see people I don't know. That's it's not the same faces. It's not kind of incestuous. It's like more people are getting engaged. At a certain point, somebody gets radicalized. What does it take to radicalize people? I'm always wondering, what will it take to wake people up? People are asleep. And what kind of catastrophe needs to happen to get people really engaged? And this presidency, maybe this is the thing that'll wake them up. They should have woken up before. We should have been awake enough to not elect a whole bunch of corporate Democrats to not have our backs. That would be nice. We have a handful of people, and that's the other thing I've been thinking about is a lot of elected officials do it because they have some overweening ego need to fill. And so they'll take the corporate money if it means they could be in power. But there's a handful of people who actually are doing it because they want to be good public servants. That's where Bernie and AOC fall on the spectrum. And we need lots more of those kind of people. We need the kind of people
Right.
who are serving because they actually want to serve rather than they want to line their pockets and have a soapbox and a bunch of people cheering for them. And we've had too much of that kind of thing. And
Well, also, you know, it's good money. I mean, Donald Trump has really shown that you can make good money
it's the
or
grip,
bad money,
baby.
but a lot of it in public office. I want to mention very quickly tonight for people in LA, we're having a film showing at the Lemley in Santa Monica on Second Street, Second Avenue. I don't know which it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Second Street.
Second Street, about Far Out. It's a movie about a hippie farm that I lived on for many years, where we helped start the No Nukes movement. We're actually getting low on tickets, so if you want to come, come early. I'm going to be there at 6. It's on the Lemley in Santa Monica. Come at 6, or the film starts at 7, but we may be sold out by then. So, but great to see you, Mara Reason. I know you're coming tonight. And you were at a rally yesterday. You want to fill us in?
Well, let me say, Harvey, that that tickets are, the last time I checked, there were only 9 seats left for tonight's showing at the Lemley Theater. That's LAEMMLE.
Right.
And or something like that. Look it up, because you can buy your tickets online. If you come at 6, it might already be sold out. I have
Okay.
that, so I think people need to, if they've waited until now, they probably need to secure their tickets online. And if you go to this is a benefit for Pacifica Radio, and if
KPFK.
you, well, specifically for KPFK, and if you go to kpfk.org, you can follow the link. You can look at the information about the film Far Out: Life After the Commune, and there's a little button to select to get your tickets, and select that button and get your tickets before they sell out.
So,
And
And
go ahead.
Sluggo and Marla, if this showing sells out, would you consider having another one, or is this it?
yeah, we will do that. We call it, or I call it, the naked hippie movie. Thankfully, I am in it, but I'm not naked. So,
You are a hippie.
but there are other people who are much better looking than me, who do get naked in there. So, but only briefly. You know, go if you're interested in that, go to Pornhub. But anyway,
You're
so
really
Mama,
cute
what
there.
else did you have to say? Yeah, Mama,
Well,
go ahead.
I also wanted to say that for follow-up, that Cliff Tasner, or I think his other name is Thelonious Axe, is the fearless leader of Southern Californian Americans for Democratic Action of Southern California. And what a terrific president you are of this organization. So if you don't know about it, please check out the website. Just do a Google search for Americans.
It's adasocal.org.
Okay.
adasocal.org.
There you
All
go.
right.
And let me just say about the rallies, which was what you wanted me to talk about. I didn't go. What I did do was I watched all day, and I watched enormous rallies. I saw drone or helicopter footage over first Boston. There were the crowd over Boston was just horrendous. I mean, giant. And then Pittsburgh and Washington, D.C., and all over the country, Austin, Houston, everywhere. I just watched all these different rallies. And Al Green, I don't know, I actually think you can find his speech. He was on fire, and he announced that he will be filing articles of impeachment within the month. And Jamie Raskin, phenomenal. I mean, there were so many great speakers, and undoubtedly, I'm sorry I missed you, Cliff, or Thelonious, as it were. But I know I've seen you before, and you're always amazing. So that's what I have to say.
It's
And
felonious,
Mila,
like a
thank you
felon,
for
just
all.
so you know. Felonious.
Well, that's good because I actually once saw Thelonious Monk play at a bar in the West Village. So there you go. Tatanka, real quick, and then we're gonna go. Sandy Bozenius and Karen Lago have got their hands up. Tatanka, go ahead, and then Sandy.
Yeah,
Then you
I
still
want
have your hand up also, so we'll get to you after Karen. Go ahead, Tatanka.
Yeah, I want to thank Mila and Cliff for their work, and everybody in this community that's doing their work. It's the kind of time where I'm sure somebody in this room knows an LA reporter who will cover or should cover the Bernie AOC rally in LA next weekend and make sure it gets on the front page, because it will be a tremendous turnout. And the only other thing I want to say is that as we build this movement, I agree with the statement about the issues of Medicaid and Medicare and veterans and all the places that are getting cut. We need to bring it back to our local communities. Key to building a movement are vibrant, resilient, person-to-person, local-to-local communities. So we go from our smaller communities up to the bigger. We always go back to the smaller. We keep building bigger and bigger without losing the personal connection on our smaller communities. So building vibrant, resistant communities so that we, the people in this room, this Zoom meeting that Sluggo holds, can be the calm in the storms that we're going to go through, because we're going to have some real challenges, and people are attracted to those who at least seem to know where they're going and are open and wide-eyed and present with that human being and where they're at. So that's the kind of presence we need to have. There's something really attractive about somebody who isn't caught up in all the chaos, and that needs to be us in every situation.
And I have to add, Tatanka, that Neil Young is going to be at the rally this coming Saturday in LA. So will Joan Baez. And there's another young singer whose name is Maggie, forgive me.
Maggie's Farm. No,
yeah.
sorry.
No. At any rate, I looked her up on YouTube, and she's also a very gifted and talented rising star. Unfortunately,
okay, great.
I'm not going to see Jesse Wells, I don't think, but hoping that we'll get to see Jesse Wells perform his wonderful song "The Poor" or War Isn't Murder, or any of the great songs. So we're going to have to get Jesse to come and join us on one of these Zooms.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we got 49 people with us. Sandy Balzinius, Karen, and then LYNN FEINERMAN again, and then we'll go back to Cliff again. Sandy, go ahead. I know you're in Columbus, Ohio, so you won't be able to come to the movie tonight in Santa Monica.
I know. I was looking forward to seeing you.
Good.
But at any rate, so I went to DC. There was, as they usually do, like a $50 bus trip you travel all night in the morning. But I was coming from Ohio, so it's like an 8-hour trip. But others were coming from St. Louis. Others were coming from Tampa, Florida to go to DC. So it was big and energetic. What I saw was in DC, there was one near the Capitol for the anti-genocide. And then all the way down at the Washington Monument, there was everybody, Indivisible, hands up, everything. So it was really cool. And then throughout the mall, you had people, of course there were tourists, but honestly, I would say more people were there carrying posters and signs. So it was amazing. I don't know how many people are there, but it is seeming like people are forgetting what the government says anymore, because they're not going to even count. They don't want to count. And so there's been drones, and I'm getting information about how many people were at different places. Now, I was hearing back from my friends in Columbus, and they said that the local paper published, like they said, a couple hundred people. And then finally they changed that to 700 people. But my friends, I'm in the car with a few of them, said that, and I'm not driving, said that there were thousands. So I don't know. We don't know the answer. But I'm just telling you, it was so big. And as far as getting signatures and names, no way. I always bring petitions. There's no way I could get people signing things at this thing. It was so crowded, so many things going on. I could not hear Jamie Raskin, even though I was nearby, because there were so many people. So all I got to say is it was fantastic. And if you're in these smaller towns, just go at the head of the march and start counting. No way could I do that in DC. I would have if I could have. Right. But in other small towns, go ahead and count your own counts, and then tell the organizers you can't trust the press on this.
No.
So, thanks for letting me speak, but it was fabulous.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you. Karen Lago. I don't think you've spoken with us before. Karen?
I have not, I don't think. I live on the northern border of New York with Canada. And
oh, my God.
How'd that sound?
Really good.
What about all those Canadians pouring over the border here?
They're not coming. They're not expecting them to come, but they're very nice when we go over. So they aren't mad at the people. They're just livid with the government. But we had a rally in Watertown, which is about half hour south of me. And it's a city of about 28,000 people. There were 1,000 people there. And then in a small town on Lake Ontario, Sackett's Harbor, we had another one, and 1,000 people showed up there. That is Tom Homan, the border czar, has a home there, and he was not there. But the people wanted to rally because there were 3 children and a mother taken by ICE on the 27th of March. No reason. They've been following the rules. They're following their paperwork's being taken care of. They show up at all their hearings. But right before school, the ICE raided this house where the migrants were living, and they were looking. They said they had a warrant for one guy who was involved in child pornography. And they said they took the kids to make sure they stayed safe. But they took them to a place in Texas, and I know we have protective services here in Jefferson County, so I didn't buy for 1 second what his excuse was. They were going to, if the local community didn't rise up, they would have been gone. But news came today that they're coming back. So
let's hope. Let's
well,
hope.
no, they're on their way back. So.
Well,
It was nationwide. Democracy Now! Covered it. There were lots of news agencies who covered the taking of those 3 kids. So it.
Well, I'm Karen. It's great to hear from you up there, and keep joining us. We're up to 50 people now, and let's go real quickly to David Sonneborn, who hasn't spoken, and then we'll go to Tatanka and Cliff again. Go ahead, David.
Hi.
Are you in a cave?
I think he's doing his Lou Gehrig imitation. That's for the baseball aficionados.
David, I don't know. You maybe have a phone on. Maybe you have a cell phone on. Turn it off, would you? We'll go now to Tatanka and then Cliff, and we'll come back to you, David. Tatanka and Cliff.
Very quickly, I saw the turnout in the UK and in Paris. It was wonderful. And just to say that there are people being picked up by ICE every single day in every single city in this country. This isn't something that's going to happen. This is something that's happening. And unless we really stand up and create effective sanctuaries and all kinds of community organizations, it's going to happen at a greater speed. So just to say that.
Terrible. Cliff, next week we'll have you do your trillionaire bit there. If you want to do it from a Tesla, that's fine. You can wear a top hat and all that stuff. But you want to advertise it to your ADA list, so we get you a good local turnout there. But go ahead.
I just wanted to say something. The point is, when people are, what our government is doing now is to create a sense of malaise and hopelessness and inertia. And the antidote for inertia is, in fact, activism. Activism is the thing you can do to feel empowered. There was a point in my life where I was very active with the pro-choice movement, and then Bill Clinton got elected. I didn't vote for him, but he got elected, and I was like, okay, the Democrats are in charge again. I can relax for a while. I was so wrong. And every day I would read the paper, and I get more and more angry about what was going on. Then I became an activist again. And just the act of, activism is like planting a seed in the garden. It's an inherently optimistic act. You plant a seed because you believe on some level something is going to grow from it. And, it's like the butterfly flaps its wings and there's a hurricane on the other side of the globe. Already Tesla's stock is down in the toilet because people are protesting at Tesla dealerships. We are having an effect. And if more and more of us have an effect, we get to the point where there's 10% of Americans taking to the streets, it will have a huge effect. And so
I'm still, we've had deep discussions here about how to follow up with these rallies so they're not just photo ops. And, I love the fact that millions of people were out. They clearly were. But what's the follow-up? I mean, do we all go home?
I don't know. I think probably a lot of people signed with Indivisible or different organizations were involved. But there's going to be more rallies. They're going to be every month. They're going to be every week. People are going to get out because it gives you community, and it is the antidote to any kind of hopelessness or inertia you're feeling. And I wake up every morning with my conscience is clear because I'm an actor. I'm not part of the problem. I'm part of the solution.
Well, I'll attest to that.
Yeah,
and I will tell you that, my life has been shaped because in high school, I was captain of the tennis team, but they recruited me for a new sport, which was activism. And we picketed the local roller rink. This is 1962 in Columbus, Ohio, and the roller rink was segregated, and we picketed and we won. And I said, "Whoa, that's a good sport we can play." So, and I had a lousy backhand, but I was good at activism, and we've been winning ever since, thanks to people like you and Tatanka. David, can we hear you now? And then we'll go to Dave Saltman. David Sonneborn, are you free of your there?
Hey, I'm here. But I'm echoing again. What do you have on? Do you have a TV on too or something? How's it echoing? Because
Well, he
I'll
sounds pretty
try.
good. I bet, I think he's probably on acid. That's the problem.
He needs to turn off one of his devices. He has two devices on.
Yeah,
at
you
the
have
same
two
time.
devices, bro. Turn
You
it
have
off.
to you can only have one audio device on at a time. Mute the other one.
Let me just say,
Maybe
put a note
he's
in-
actually God, and God talks like that. So I don't know.
I think he's
whenever I
okay
talk to
now.
God, it sounds just like that. So.
I think we got him okay now, Professor. Go ahead, David.
Okay, so I just wanted to reemphasize. I put a note in the chat about SB 42 for people in California. That's a California Fair Elections Act. It's quite important. I did it at my rally in Santa Ana. Goes like hotcakes, as Trent Lang, the head sponsor, says. It goes like hotcakes. Everybody wants to sign, so we're going to keep going on that because we can collect signatures up through the end of May. So we want people to get that petition. You can get it at, I guess you go to Yes Fair Elections to get the petition. And we really need to continue full force, because while it's going to get through all the committees, the last one, what do you call that? Not administrative committee. So what's the last committee
Is that reconciliation or?
Not reconciliation. It begins with A.
Well,
anyway, it's the last committee, and they're probably going to put it on suspense. But we got to keep pushing, and the more signatures we get, the more pressure will be. It'll go right through all the committees.
Okay.
Up until the last one.
All right.
Let's get people active on that big time in California.
Well, put it in the chat so we know what we're doing, David. And there you go.
Real quick, Sluggo. Clifford, is SoCal ADA on this effort? Do you work on California legislative initiatives like that?
Yes, he does. Well, let's go to Dave Saltman, and also Lee Felsenstein's with us. We want to talk about the follow-up to these giant rallies. David, go ahead, Salty, and then Lee Felsenstein.
Yeah, very interesting discussion. I would like to note for the record that my 5-year-old granddaughter went to her first political rally over the weekend, and I would also, that was my son's daughter. My sister, who I come from an activist family. When I was in high school, my phone rang one night, and I picked it up, and they said, "This is the Ku Klux Klan, and we're going to burn your house down."
Oh, God.
I grew up with this, it's a long story. But anyway, my sister regretted that she couldn't go to any rallies because she was out at the Point Reyes National Seashore, which, as you know, if you're Californian, is practically in the middle of the ocean, And guess what? There's a place called Point Reyes Station, which is like where the post office is. And there was a crowd of people holding signs, and some were really quite funny. And it was really, it's just really impressive. I have a few comments. Harvey, you and I were talking during the week about possible action. I think this is, I don't know, maybe this doesn't strike you, but this really struck me. As we all know, Donald Trump's favorite president is Herbert Hoover, the author of the Hawley-Smoot tariffs, the largest tariffs in American history, which were, I can't say they were the proximate cause of the 29 crash, but they almost immediately contemporaneous with the 29 crash. And I think we haven't mentioned anything so far tonight about the fact that we've just had this massive market crash, and even the billionaires are angry about it. Jamie Dimon came out in public today trashing Trump. Who's the other guy?
Jamie Dimon is the chair of Chase Bank, right?
Chair of Chase Bank.
Yeah.
The successor to Sanford Weill and John D. Rockefeller. And the other guy was Bill Ackman, who is I don't know if you follow financial shenanigans, but I do. And he's a very famous, he's the Mr. Bonds. And he also went public, dissing Trump. So these guys are being peeled off one by one. And, I don't have to tell you about the Republican senators and congressmen who are also little by little, I don't know how much we can trust these guys, but guys like Jamie Dimon are not to be messed around with. He's a powerful and super intelligent guy. Ray Dalio published a piece. This guy. He published a piece today.
I saw Kramer, who's the stock guy. I don't watch him, but I happened to find him on TV. He was literally screaming.
Right.
He went completely nuts about the tariffs.
I know Kramer. I used to work at CNBC. He's a very smart guy. He went to Harvard Business. He lived in his car when he went to Harvard Business School. That's a guy that wants to get an education.
Yeah, really. I get all my information from Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel, and they say that the stock market has lost $5 trillion value since Trump took office.
That's right, and that's just in the U.S. Everybody else's markets are crashing. Anyway, here's what I'm thinking. When I lived in the Bay Area, and I used to work for Ramparts, I was deeply involved in the anti-war movement back then. And I happened to, in the course of my doings, I became quite friendly with Lou Goldblatt and Harry
Salty, we got about 5-10 minutes before we need to get to our next segment, and we got Lee.
Okay, so go ahead.
Because what I'm going to propose is a general strike, which was what set up the Longshoremen's Union in 1934 after the crash and after the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, and it shut down the country. All the 7 ports on the West Coast went on strike, and the strikes went throughout the country. There was one in Toledo, there was one in Minneapolis. I won't say it was a general strike all over the nation, but over 1 million people struck that year. That is a lot.
I've heard that's an interesting idea. I think you're the perfect guy to lead it. And
I was going to suggest you. But listen, I have a plan for leading it. Pacifica is the key.
Well, there you go.
That's there, an information network that's already in place all over the country, and you guys are in it.
Let's stay on that. Let's stay on that, David, because that's a great idea.
Yeah. Lee Felsenstein, you and Salty are buddies. Do you have a way that through the electronic netherworld, that a general strike could be conjured up with using the internet?
Okay, I don't have video.
He'll get one by tomorrow.
Yeah.
I want to say something before Lee speaks. There are 2 people that we could bring on the show next time with the Longshore Union out of Long Beach that have been talking about this for 2 or 3 months, right around Labor Day. So there is conversation going on in several unions about this already. So if we want to bring those people on, it might be.
Yes, absolutely. Bring them on, please. Let's do that next week.
Thanks for that, Tatanka. And we need to hear from Lee and Lynn, and we have Donald Whitehead waiting to speak. He made
yes, Donald is going to, and we'll be joined by Susie Shannon. Go ahead, Lee, and then Lynn, and then let's pursue this. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you, David, for bringing the topic up.
Yeah. Well, we'll make that an agenda item for next week's talk. It is nonpartisan, right? we'll strike the Democrats as well as the Republicans.
Absolutely.
But,
We got
you know,
billionaires on our side this time.
right. Absolutely. Lee, did you want to chime in on that before we
Well,
go?
yeah, I mean, I've written up something called Reverse the Media, which is my sort of next plan for the collecting names and contact information and interest from the various rallies. Now, it was too late for the Saturday rally, but there's more coming up. I mean, I know there's a Bernie AOC rally in LA on the 12th.
Yes, it's in LA. Right.
So this was aimed at that. And basically, it's instructions for how to do it. The trouble here is I'm not an organizer, designer. And so I said, well, we need a working group. So we got a working group of about 6 people. And we had a little discussion about 3 people. But I'm not one who's going to go turn people up and get them organized. Somebody has to be able to go out and talk to the Bernie people, etc., and say, here, we got this idea. You can implement it. You don't have to change anything you're doing, but it is going to take a little extra work and you get a lot out of it. Now,
well,
if I'm to come up with it is a job for a designer. To implement it is a job for an organizer. And that's who we're missing. So who is it might like to get involved in this from the standpoint of going out to where it's going to be done, talking to the people who have their hands full, explaining how it takes only very little, and here's how much we can do for you if you can't do it. That's all pretty much document, and I can make the document available.
Yes, please do. That would be great. We can send it out, and we'll talk about it next week. Everybody will get a copy, and everybody's got networks who's on this call, all 51 of us here, and we'll keep doing this. Wonderful. That's what I've been hoping for. Great, Lee. That's fabulous. I do want to say one thing. Oh, go ahead, Lee. Go ahead.
How do I make it available? I sent you a copy. I sent everybody on the list a copy, but it's only
Yeah.
6. So
all right, absolutely.
Make it available. Okay. How do I
absolutely.
Have you
Sounds
already
great.
sent it, Lee? Have you sent it out already?
No.
To a list of 6 people.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Well, I'll resend it. We'll put it up everywhere.
Fine.
We'll put it up at freepress.org and all the other lists and all the ships at sea.
All
you know,
right.
why not?
If you
Absolutely.
can't find it, get back to me.
Okay, I will. I do want to say one thing, a small gripe, but Bernie Sanders, who I love dearly and who's really a great leader in this, always talks about authoritarianism and oligarchy. I think they should just say dictatorship. I mean, everybody knows what a dictatorship is. That's what Trump himself said, dictatorship. I think that's the word we should be using. But what do I know? LYNN FEINERMAN, then we're going to go to Donald Whitehead, who's going to take us into the homeless issue. Go ahead, LYNN, please.
Just for the record, Women Rising Radio has been calling for a general strike on Facebook and elsewhere for at least 5 or 6 months. And I'm totally on board with the idea, but I think that we need to target certain of the most crucial and critical issues that are most important, as I mentioned before, among them Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And I think that we can mobilize a general strike more easily, taking on and targeting certain very urgent issues, very urgent policy changes, and the people who are effecting changes. And to that effect, I wanted to just mention that a couple of people in my circle on Facebook were complaining loudly that Nancy Pelosi had herself an appearance in Pennsylvania at the Pennsylvania Hands Off rally in March. And I'm wondering how, in general, as a response, I am wondering how the Democratic Party is going to figure. You have the Jamie Raskins, few and far between, and the Bernie Sanders, who really Democratic, and the squad, who people think, you know, when they get up and talk are really bona fide. At our San Rafael rally, we had Jared Huffman, who, you know, sometimes he comes through, sometimes just, you know, DOA. You just don't know where he's from because silently says nothing and then votes wrong. So I'm wondering, you know, we have the organized Lee Felsen. I mean, this hands-off rally was organized by a group of people who are absolutely capable of affecting what you're talking about. I think the design is more important because I think it has to target certain really important policies that are having that are happening now. So I just wanted to say that. And I wanted to ask, maybe this was talked about a bit, but, where is the Democratic Party going to come in on this? I mean, they're
wherever they can make a profit. I mean,
yeah, this
the
is the
Democratic
problem.
Party seems to be a for-profit organization, boring as hell. Jim, what's his name, Carville, has recommended doing nothing. He calls it the rope-a-dope strategy. But come on. I mean, really, I think there's
James Carville is a repugnant. He is run by his wife,
right.
and she is an operative, repugnant.
Right. Steve Caruso wants to jump in, and then we'll go to Donald Whitehead, who's gratifying to have you with us, Donald. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I put a copy of Lee's email in a document in the chat. So if people want to save that or click on it, or look at it, whatever. So it is in the chat. I saved a copy of it. I think that's what Ray or Lee was talking about. It was sent out on March 24th. Ray Lutz, I don't know. We'll get on to Donald Whitehead. Mimi?
Yeah, and go ahead. Also, I want to remind everybody in LA, especially West LA, come to the Santa Monica Lemley tonight. The film's at 7, but you better get there early because I think we're running out of tickets, especially you, Paul Newman, and everybody else. Again, the Santa Monica Lemley on 2nd Street at 7 p.m. tonight is the Naked Hippie movie. You may want to come a little early because we may sell out. Okay, Mimi, KARLA SAND, and then we want to go to Donald Whitehead, who's been patiently waiting. Donald, you're going to take us, we've raised issues, Social Security, Medicare. There's also homelessness, so let's deal with that too. Donald is the great guru here with SUSIE Shannon. Donald, SUSIE will be right with us. Let me just let Mimi and KARLA speak their piece and we'll come to you. We good?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. Mimi, go ahead, and then KARLA.
Thank you so much. Thanks for organizing. I was wondering, would this be the time to make a quick climate announcement?
Yep, hurry up and do it. Please do.
Yeah, go ahead, quick.
Okay, thank you. There's the Make Polluters Pay coalition working right now, and there is a bill on the tables here in California, and there's an organizing call tonight at 5 p.m., and I will put that in the chat. It's going to be a huge fight, y'all. We need everybody's help, please, because I don't know all my wording. I could go research it, but for some reason, this will appear as a tax. So it needs 2/3 of the assembly to pass. So we need everyone's support that we can get. And there's also a Google Doc for people to sign on to support and also for organizations. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh, and
Mimi, thank you. You say 5 p.m. Is that Pacific time?
Pacific time, yes. And it's Dolores Huerta's birthday on Thursday. She's going to be 95 years old. I'm organizing a local event. Thanks so much, everybody.
Good for you, Mimi. Good for you. Thank you so much. KARLA SAND, you're in Minnesota.
Yes, I'm in Minnesota, and we had a large rally. I was not there because I am a member of the PDA disability team, and 1 in 4 Americans is disabled, and who uses Medicare, Social Security more than the disabled and the seniors? So there needs to be more emphasis in that area. And I keep hearing young people, they're not going to stick behind Social Security and Medicare in a hot summer day. So that's my big issue is we got to include all the people. And what's the DFL going to do, or the Democratic Farmer Labor in Minnesota? We'll just have more meetings and more people will come out and complain, but nothing really will change.
Well, KARLA, show up to those meetings and make them change. I don't like the defeatism. You're a winner and you're not going to give up. So don't tell people nothing's going to change. We got to make it change, and you're going to help us, right? Oh, she muted herself.
All right. Okay, well, listen.
Wait a minute. At age 86, and the DFLer since birth, and the International Democrats, I have done what I can do. But I'm just telling you that's history, and that's the way it happens. I'm not being a defeatist. I go every day to every darn thing. But
there you go. I just want to make sure everybody understood that you're a fighter and a winner, and you're not going to take no for an answer, and neither are we. Thank you so much. KARLA, you're an inspiration. Love you.
Thanks, KARLA. Okay, listen, we have the great Donald Whitehead with us, and we're going to be joined by SUSIE Shannon at some point, we talk about Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. There's also homelessness. And Donald has been with us before. It's been a while, but there are new developments, I believe, in the movement to deal with homelessness. I think it's time, of course, that we turn all the Trump towers into shelters. But go ahead, Donald, and tell us hi. Give us a brief intro, and then tell us what's cooking.
Sure. Donald Whitehead, I'm the executive director of the National Coalition for the Homeless. We're the oldest advocacy group that works exclusively with and on behalf of people experiencing homelessness. Been around since the late 70s, early 80s. We drafted the McKinney-Vento Act, which is the primary source of funding for homelessness, and have been around since then. As you talk about issues that will be incredibly important moving forward, what we see within the homeless population is devastating and does affect some of the other groups you've mentioned. One little known fact is that the majority of the people who are unhoused, who are actually living on the streets of America, are 55 and older. Over the last few years, we've seen a tremendous increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness. Thank you for sharing. We've seen a 30% increase just in the last 2 years. And what we haven't seen as much of is the effort on behalf of the homeless service sector to actually combat it in any kind of fundamental way. So we're working to do that now. And April 22nd, and the significance behind April 22nd is some of you may remember last year there was a Supreme Court decision, and that decision basically made it legal to arrest, fine, and jail people experiencing homelessness, even if there wasn't enough shelter in the community. Previously, if there wasn't enough shelter in a community, a municipality could not arrest, jail, or fine people experiencing homelessness. Again, since April 22nd actually the decision came down in July of last year, the Supreme Court upheld a decision that said even if there's not enough shelter, people couldn't be homeless in Grants Pass, Oregon. And since that time, 160 municipalities have created legislation or ordinances that make it illegal to be homeless, the worst of which are in Tennessee, where it's a felony with up to 6 years in jail if you're homeless on property, on state property in Tennessee. In Kentucky, there is a ordinance that says you can use stand your ground principles if you find someone homeless on your property, meaning you can use violence up to and including deadly violence. In Fremont, California, there is an ordinance right now that says you can be fined, jailed, or ticketed if you help a homeless person. So we see these cascading issues across our country. A lot of these are in progressive communities. California leads the way with new ordinances. In addition to all of that, Elon Musk, has targeted HUD for cuts, and that has been agreed upon by the new Secretary Turner. They would cut 50% of HUD staff overall at a time where we see homelessness increasing. And on top of that cut, there would be a 80% cut in the actual administrative departments that cover homeless issues, disaster issues, and also the CDBG program. So that's what we're looking at. An 80% cut in the CPD department at HUD, and a 50% overall. Right now, only a fourth of the people who need housing are able to get it. And so we know that that'll have a devastating effect coupled with the budget. So we're asking people to come out on April the 22nd. It'll be one of the first demonstrations on the Capitol grounds, but there'll be simultaneous events across the country. We have over 100 people that have responded to our website. I put our landing page in the chat. Please consider doing something yourself on that day. SUSIE Shannon will be joining us. I know that her group is going to do a massive rally in downtown Los Angeles. So hoping to get more people on board to do that. And I see Mike has a question. I'll stop there.
Go ahead, Mike Hersh. I couldn't unmute you. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Donald. Donald dropped everything to be with us, and I really appreciate the effort that you show, the leadership that you show on this issue. We hear people list a whole lot of different issues that are very, very important, and far too often the plight of the unhoused is left off of that list. We walk by unhoused people every day in most major cities, and too often people just look away and ignore them. We cannot afford to look away from our sisters and our brothers who are unhoused, whether they're unhoused on a temporary basis or a long-term basis. They're but for the grace of God go each and every one of us. And we have to remember that we cannot really call ourselves a civilized nation if we let men, women, children, veterans, people who are facing a setback, not have a roof over their heads, and to consign them to inadequate shelters or other substandard living situations. I just want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I just want to call upon everybody to keep the unhoused in your hearts and minds, because this is a 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365-day a year tragedy, and it's a disgrace. And thank you again, Donald, for everything that you're doing about that. We're certainly going to hear from SUSIE Shannon, who's focusing on the poverty aspect of it, and she herself was unhoused. And as Mimi wrote in the chat just now, having unhoused neighbors is a failure of our society, and these people are our neighbors. These are just decent everyday folks, and like I said, that could be any one of us at any time. And it's just absolutely essential that we don't forget them, especially when all these cuts are coming through. It's going to hit those in need the hardest.
Absolutely.
Dr. Nancy, do you want to add to Mike's eloquence there?
I don't know that I can add. It was said very well. I want to echo everything he said. I live in Santa Monica, plenty of unhoused people on the streets, and loads of complaints all the time. I recall trying to be positive about this. Wasn't there a report a couple months ago that Karen Bass, our mayor, actually did the best in the nation in terms of reducing our homelessness in their city, and that California at least grew less than most states, meaning that something can be done. And I really appreciate all that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And the issue is that we've never funded the structural issues that cause homelessness to the level of need. So Los Angeles is a perfect example. They house 70,000 people a day. Wow. 70,000 people get housed. 70,000 people go into their system, but the next day another 70,000 show up. The dirty little secret is that the majority of the people that are becoming homeless every day are new to homelessness. This is their first time. So we know that housing costs increased by 18% year over year. And if you're on a fixed income, there's no way you keep up with. 38% of the growth was in families. So you have families and elderly. And who's going to be attacked in this new budget? Elderly people in our community, and also children. With the food stamp cuts and the Medicaid cuts, those are the two populations who will be most affected, and it will dramatically increase our numbers. The other report out of California said this, and this is a very important issue. People don't respond to homelessness as well as because they see it as a moral issue. And there's this false narrative that it's a moral failure, that people are there because of drugs and alcohol. And if you look at that study out of USC Binoff, the University of California, the majority of the people are not there because of substance. They're there because of the lack of affordable housing. Nowhere in the country can you afford a 2-bedroom unit if you're working a minimum wage job or you're getting subsidized income. 0 places in the entire country. And so, Mayor Bass, I take my hat off to her. She ignored the governor's instructions to round up people, and it will with what we're seeing right now, if there isn't a congressional solution to this that changes the trajectory, we're in a lot of trouble. Again, it's increased 30% over the last 2 years before all of these cuts. So I could go on and on with statistics, but the truth is we cannot stand by while this happens. And one of the challenges for me is that we haven't been loud enough as a sector, the homeless sector. You haven't heard a lot of direct action around housing. And so we have to do a better job. We got to really make sure that we're mobilizing people around this issue so people find it as important.
Well, let me talk. I want to address something real quick. We'll go to Mike, or rather Steve. Well, go ahead, Steve, and then I'll raise the point I wanted to raise. Steve Caruso.
Yeah, I heard a statistic, not sure where it's from. There are 28 vacant houses for each homeless person in the country right now. That's all. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, and we are working on an initiative on adaptive reuse. There's hundreds of thousands of vacant units, and there is a provision within McKinney-Vento that this might be one good thing from this administration with some of the cuts that they're doing to departments. That federal property should be used for homeless services first, but it was a bureaucratic nightmare. We worked with the administration right before they left to change it, but we still have to wait until the comment period is over May the 10th, so it doesn't get derailed. So we're hoping to launch after May 10th an adaptive reuse campaign. And Susie's group does a lot of work on adaptive reuse. They have an adaptive reuse museum, as a matter of fact. So they've done some considerable work on, but we have a lot to do when it comes to these abandoned and vacant buildings.
Wow. KARLA SAND in Minnesota. Carla, did you want to jump in on this? Let's see if there you go.
Yes, I do. I am on many housing committees in Minnesota, and we also have the problem. But I'm wondering if you're working with the cities, because we've narrowed most of the problems down to the cities and the regulations and sort of local control versus density and more housing and more social housing. Are you working on those too?
Absolutely. One of the things that we recognized several years ago, and we continue to ramp up these efforts, is especially when it comes to criminalization, those are local decisions. It's the local mayor, it's the sheriff. There is no federal policy to criminalize people experiencing homelessness. So we've been working a lot on that. And in addition to those initiatives, we've been working on things like zoning in communities. That is another really big issue that has a lot of opposition, changing those laws. If we're going to create affordable housing to the level, we do really need to address zoning in a lot of communities. But to your point, one of the things that we're doing, and that's why we are, with our rally, we're having these simultaneous actions, is because we have to lift up the issue, change the narrative, and make people aware in those local communities. So that's a lot of what we're doing. We've been pretty successful. We've defeated a couple of really nasty initiatives. You may have heard of the Cicero Institute, and you may not have heard of them, but they're hedge fund operators who have made a commitment to make sure that instead of shelters and permanent supportive housing, people experiencing homelessness are forced into treatment, are into what the administration is saying right now is they're going to create detention camps for people experiencing homelessness. And I know we've been here before, but that is their actual plan. It's in Project 2025. And the president issued an executive order last week saying that he wanted to start these detention.
Oh my God. Well, we got SUSIE Shannon with us, thankfully. SUSIE, good to see you. We still have 46 people with us. And I do want to mention that Trump has, when he was asked about the crashing the economy, he said, and I quote, and this is actually from the Bible, only the weak will fail. I mean, that's pure social Darwinism. And of course, it blames anybody's economic problem on them, as opposed to society having any responsibility for. Only the weak shall fail. That's somewhere in the Bible, and here we have Trump telling us, a guy who was born a billionaire. Don't get me going on it. So anyway, Susie Shannon, you're one of the great heroes of the, or sheroes of the movement to end homelessness. You're with Donald Whitehead. Couldn't be better. Say hi.
Hi, everyone. So for some reason, I can't turn my video on for this Zoom.
Try it
You
now.
But I
should be
want to.
able to. You should be able to now. Originally, when you
Susie.
came
Oh,
in.
yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm also here with Mary Cellini from Housing is a Human Right, who also works with National Coalition for the Homeless through our organization. So first of all, I want to say I'm so excited to see Donald Whitehead on this call, because he has been in the trenches for decades, and we just have to keep going. I mean, that's the main thing on homelessness, really, is that we just can't stop, because whether it's someone absolutely terrible like Donald Trump, who is now on board with, as Donald Whitehead said, criminalization and even putting people into something akin to concentration camps. We obviously have to be like the resistance to all of this. We have solutions to homelessness. Obviously, Donald talked about adaptive reuse and taking these empty buildings. If you live in Los Angeles, we have 70,000 vacant units in Los Angeles alone, enough to house every single person who is unhoused. It's the same in San Francisco. It's the same in cities all across the United States. And yet here we have encampments, homeless encampments in the shadows of these empty buildings. And it's such an easy solution. And we absolutely must stop all of the red tape and the temporary solutions on homelessness. We need to build permanent housing. And on the 22nd, if you are in Los Angeles, we're going to be having a rally here at City Hall at 8 a.m. in the morning. And we are going to take red tape and put it all around City Hall, all around the building of City Hall, as part of our protest, to make sure that that people are aware that we're just stuck in red tape here, and that we need to build more permanent housing, and that we're not going to keep taking these temporary solutions any longer as a solution, that they need to be permanent.
Let me ask you a quick question. In light of the remote work that has come with the COVID and with Zoom and all the other great advances in electronic abilities for people to work remotely, and now in combination with the Trump catastrophe of the crashing economy, is there commercial real estate that is coming available for housing?
There is a lot, and it's been happening. It was happening even before Zoom, right? That more people were working from home, just doing conference calls and that kind of thing. So it's been happening for a while. But yes, I mean, these buildings are opening up. They're, right for adaptive reuse, for, converting those office spaces actually into housing. And we find that, I mean, for buildings that are just empty and that we're converting into housing specifically for people who are homeless, it costs so much less, like $200,000, right, per unit, as opposed to, and that would be at the high, maybe 100. It's more like 120,000 per unit. But we are like upwards of 500,000 to 700,000 to build these units new. So when you're converting, you get the advantage of having all the infrastructure that's already in place, right? And then you can just convert those spaces into permanent housing.
How much would it cost per unit to convert Trump Tower to a homeless
I'll have to get
accommodation?
back to you. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
You'll have to kick the Russians out first.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
if
my
you could
understanding is that
put the price in rubles, that would help. Go ahead.
Yeah,
buying.
my understanding is that Trump cut so many corners, you might have to invest to bring it up to code.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Well, this is a big deal. So we have two of the great experts on dealing with this issue, and everybody's the big three, of course: Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Housing has to be added to that.
Absolutely. And so many times, we work as progressives on a lot of these issues, and people don't talk about low income communities and the impact that our policies have on these communities, even though most of the things that we're fighting for will impact these households. And when you think about it for lower income communities, if Medicaid gets cut, their household gets cut. If Section 8 housing gets cut, they also get cut. So we're talking about families and households that are getting cut with every single one of these programs, right? Because they don't have access to food, to housing, to medical care in any respect if all of these programs go away, and they are going to be the hardest hit from this administration.
Wow. Does anyone else want to jump in here and join with Susie and
yeah,
Don?
Sluggo, I think that Susie raised a very important point. And it's not only if these programs are cut, which they are, but there's also such rampant destruction going on that checks will be late. People won't be able to advise like Social Security where if they move, where to send the checks to. And so many people are just one paycheck away from living out on the streets. And I think what Susie and Donald have been saying, we have to tell that to all of our friends and all of our contacts that it would be less expensive to find housing for these people than to leave them suffering in neglect. And unfortunately, the incentives for local governments is to try to drive people out. And what you'll hear is if you're humane to people who are unhoused, then the word will get around and we'll get a whole lot of unhoused people moving into our jurisdiction. And with these cuts, we can't afford to help them. It's just a lie. It's just a lie. It's much more cost effective to treat people as people and attend to their needs than to treat them as pests and try to drive them away.
Here's a major question here, Susie and Donald. With the crash of the commercial real estate market, this should be, everybody talks about, the Milton Friedman people talk about the market. It would seem to me there's a confluence here of solving the homeless crisis with filling vacant commercial real estate, a lot of which is in downtown. But all these office buildings, because of remote work and the Trump depression, it would seem to me a lot of space is opening up. So there'll be a huge capital demand to convert office space into residential space, building a lot of, half bathrooms, basically. But isn't there maybe someone come up with a national program for converting commercial real estate to housing?
Well, Susie can answer it and I can answer it in this way. We've been working with the Pew Institute, and one of the major causes for homelessness in the first place was the loss of SROs. Do you remember the old YWCAs and YMCAs?
What's an SRO? I'm sorry.
Single room occupancy.
Okay.
So if you remember in the late 70s, early 80s, these single rooms existed all over the country. YMCA housing, workforce housing, they called it. Hundreds of thousands of those left the market.
Why? Why did they leave the market?
Because cities in urban renewal projects started to remove those and build some of those big office towers that are now vacant. And so what happened is they didn't want the poor people close to the downtown business. So they created additional programs to move people out. And then we also saw a lot of those people end up in homeless shelters because they didn't have that option anymore. So as I mentioned before, the cost of housing outweighs the minimum wage jobs that most of those people used to have. So one of the challenges was the older plumbing and electricity. Now Pew has found a way around that. and they found a way to utilize those units as multi-person units. So the old model where there was a shared kitchen and a shared bathroom, and we're working with them to be able to get that design to the market, because the pushback has always been that the units would have to be too big. The conversion for the infrastructure, the plumbing, the electricity was too cost ineffective, but that has been overcome by Pew and other groups around the country.
Well, this needs to be publicized.
Yes, they did a major study on it and published it.
Will you send us that, and we'll get
sure.
We'll put it at freepress.org. This
Absolutely.
is a big deal. This is a landmark moment. That demand for office space is not coming back.
No,
no, it's not.
That commercial and industrial real estate, administrative real estate is never going to have, not with Trump. And by the way, isn't Donald Trump's favorite song YMCA? I mean, can't we use that as like an incentive to get him to switch? Anyway, go ahead, Susie. What were you going to say? Oh, and Paul has a hand.
I mean, I agree with everything that Donald is saying, and I think our cities and counties who keep looking for solutions, they should be buying these buildings and converting them. They're spending more right now on services for people who are homeless than they would if they just provided permanent housing. I mean, this is one of the things, if you're not moved by the humanitarian argument, you really should be moved by the financial argument. I mean, the first state to reach a functional zero in chronic homelessness was Utah. And they didn't do it because they cared about the homeless community. They did it because it saved them $8,000 to $12,000 per person that was chronically homeless. They did it for financial reasons. And when I drafted SB 1380, which Holly Mitchell, who was a state senator at the time, authored in California, Jerry Brown didn't sign that legislation to create, to make housing a human right, because he really cared about the homeless community. He did it because he realized that housing people with permanent housing actually saves money. This saves money. I mean, this is a win-win for everyone. It helps with the budget, right? And it also helps to house people. And we won't see as many homeless encampments popping up, all over the United States.
When you said, what did you say about Utah? I couldn't follow that. What exactly?
So the state of Utah, which is a red state, reached a functional zero in chronic homelessness.
What does that mean, functional zero?
You
say nobody in Utah was homeless?
No, it means that that for everyone who is chronically homeless, and that at the time meant somebody who was homeless for 4 or 5 years, there was housing for each one of those people. We don't call it zero, we call it functional zero, because there are always a very small percentage of the people, it's usually around 5%, who won't come in off the streets. It's very small. They make it seem like it's a lot, but it's only a very small percentage who either won't come into a program or they leave the program. So we call it a functional zero. But they were the first ones to reach that in their red state, and they did it to save money, and they saved $8,000 to $12,000 per person per year that was chronically homeless by providing permanent housing for them, as opposed to temporary solutions. Temporary meaning a shelter or interim housing or a place that's not permanent for them.
So when you say permanent housing, does that include a kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom? Or what kind of accommodation are we talking about?
It typically can, but it means a place where they have a lease and it's habitable and it's long term. Yeah, it's long term. It's like anyone else who has an apartment, or is renting a house. It's long term. It means that you're there and you're stable.
Well, who are the landlords? Is this government owned or is it privately owned?
So the landlords can be nonprofits who have Section 8 housing. Landlords could even be, the government with public housing, although we know that program has been under attack the public housing program has been under attack for quite some time. But yeah, it's typically nonprofits who offer what's called project-based Section 8. That means the entire building is Section 8, and that means that every unit is Section 8. A lot of people talk about Section 8 vouchers. It can also mean that, where someone gets a voucher and they can go to a private landlord and rent an apartment, but it means it's permanent, as opposed to these interim solutions. Look, you can make as many shelters as you want, but if a shelter has like a 3-month maximum for people in a lifetime, which one of the shelters here in LA has that, they can only go to that shelter for 3 months and then they get kicked out, right? If a shelter only allows you to stay for a specific amount of time, or let's say that you don't like it because maybe there's bed bugs or some other things going on and you leave, that's a temporary solution for you. Whereas permanent housing, you have a lease, you have your apartment, you can stay there. Lots of people who have disability, like underlying medical conditions or disabilities, seniors, there's all types of housing that's being created for seniors and people with disabilities, or just people who are unhoused who need a permanent space. And it's called project-based Section 8.
Wow. Okay, so here's Paul Newman. Did you want to chime in, Paul? And then I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, how are you, Susie? Good to
I'm
see
good.
you.
How are you?
Pretty good. Anyway, what I wanted to say was on AliExpress, I shop there to get stuff. They're in China, but they got these tiny homes that are amazing for like $6,000. I mean, our city could afford to get that with those type of homes. I mean, I have it. I mean, if I could share a screen, I could just quickly show you for a couple minutes what they look like.
You can, but they're also building these in the United States.
Well,
as
yes,
well.
exactly.
So why do you need to import them? It's such a waste.
Well, no, I understand that. That's not my point. The point
can
is they
share
could
the
build these.
screen. Go ahead.
All I want to
Yeah.
do is just show them that they could build them here. Exactly. And that's what I want to show you, if it's okay.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead, Paul.
All
No
right.
one's stopping you.
Well, maybe they can clean the motors out of those Tesla pickups and turn those into houses.
But
Wow,
the
look at that.
doors will fall off though.
Yeah, right.
Catch
I
on
bought
fire.
God, $7
I bought a
grand for that?
Chickenbacher, a Rickenbacker guitar, and it's called a Chinese Chickenbacher here,
Yeah.
and for like $300 where they charge 2,000, you know. But look at these homes that they could do. They built, some of them are built out of containers.
Right.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
amazing the technology China has.
Well, they're doing that in the people are doing that in the United States. You don't have to go to China to be inventive.
Yeah,
I
but they're
mean, it's
charging
just
like
happening here.
50,000 for them.
No,
Yeah.
no, not
I
really.
mean,
Well, where are
we
they
have
charging
a-
them for less?
yeah, we have a tiny home movement here in the city of Los Angeles, and we have kind of tiny home villages, which are kind of interim housing, although people can actually stay there as long as they
Wow.
want. So it's kind of a mixture.
Oh, nice.
The only problem was that DWP, even though these tiny homes cost like $6,000 to $10,000, the DWP was charging like $100,000 to do like the hookups and stuff like
Oh
that.
my
They
God.
for people to have electricity, and then the fire department came in and they were trying to charge all this money. So some of our council members were able to get that down in terms of city services.
Well, what about
But it is
solar
great. I
panels?
mean, unfortunately, all these tiny homes right now are interim housing,
Right.
but I'm a big fan of it just because it gives people non-congregate housing. That means that they can have their own little tiny home to themselves. They can bring their stuff in, right? Which is not always the case with the shelter. And they have their own space where they can, close the door and shut out the rest of the world. And they have a roof over their head and they're out of inclement weather. But they also have their own space.
Well, then who owns them? Who owns the tiny home?
Well, right now for ours, the city owns it, and then a nonprofit will manage it.
So the city hires a nonprofit to manage the tiny home.
Yeah.
And then, but rent is charged.
No, they don't charge rent.
No, there's no rent? Okay.
No, there's not rent.
All right. So here's another question off the wall.
Mhm.
Joanne Fabrics just went out of business. They have 80 80 big box stores around the country. What is going to happen to those big box stores? Could they be turned into housing?
I could jump on that. And I also want to point out that there are some nonprofits that operate tiny home villages. There's a huge tiny home village where they're actually also doing 3D printing homes. It was actually the first place to do 3D printing homes in Austin, Texas. And that actually is permanent. So there are a couple of different kinds of, and we do encourage the production of any kind of housing. Now, some people have mental health issues that don't allow them to be in tiny homes. But for those who could utilize that housing, we certainly support that. And it comes in all kinds of forms. Hilda Solis is using container homes with air conditioning that are fabulous in Los Angeles. It's also happening in Atlanta, Georgia. But the question of, I think you've hit on something that we've been trying to promote, the use of all of these businesses going offline. The other option is just the whole, you see all of these malls that are losing leases, that people are leaving, especially the strip malls. Those would be ideal to create permanent housing in. The ideas are plentiful. There's tons of ideas. We just need the political will to do it.
Well,
now,
do people actually like living in these places? I know there's a big argument. Well, there's always shelter space. I understand that people, and a lot of people hate shelters. But I mean, so do people like living in tiny homes? Would they like living in units that, when Chase Bank closes a high rise and we turn it into housing, are people going to want to live there?
Oh, so here's my take on that, and Susie, certainly, I'm sure you'll weigh in as well. The idea is we give people options. That option is not going to be the desirable option for every person, but as long as we offer a list of options, so it might be tiny homes. There's a lot of problems with shelters. We could talk a whole day about that. Just the safety, the cleanliness. Some of those things are not being done properly. Most of the shelters have no accountability because they're not run by government agencies. They're run by private and sometimes faith-based organizations. So that's a whole nother issue. But, when what we do see often with adaptive reuse is that is being done for high-end homes. And certainly those people in the $4,000 apartments in DC, they really like those units. So I'm sure we could do something comparable for people that are at the bottom of the economic ladder. So, I think the idea is just to give people a choice, not to force them into treatment or put them in an encampment, but give them some options that are viable. Like Susie said, the most important thing about those tiny homes is they have locks on the door. And we know that people experiencing homelessness are victimized often, especially women, the elderly, people with mental health issues and other behavioral health issues. So this gives them that option. The safety that's necessary for people to get on with their lives is critically important. But again, every solution doesn't fit everybody. So we need to offer a range of solutions.
Well,
Harvey, there are just incredible examples of adaptive reuse, from malls to hospitals to schools that have closed and been converted. And we actually have an exhibit here in downtown Los Angeles at the Barclay Hotel, which, if any of you watched Beretta when you were younger, was filmed in this it's Barclay Hotel, but it's now permanent housing for folks. But we have a whole exhibit that actually shows these absolutely beautiful apartments. There's even a hospital here in Los Angeles that was converted. It's in East Los Angeles, that was converted into these beautiful senior apartments, affordable senior apartments. So, the sky's the limit. And like I said, you get the advantage of having the existing infrastructure. So it really lowers the cost per unit when you're converting.
And the time.
Go ahead. Well, so how many units do we need to solve the homeless crisis, and how many potentially convertible, adapted for use units are there?
So the need is probably somewhere around 7 million. That's what the National Low Income Housing Coalition estimates as the unmet need. I think it might even be higher than that, to be honest, because a lot of people are living doubled up, and a lot of people are living in unsafe conditions. But they think it's about 7 million, and that's the number of units that are not online right now for low-income people. That's the only place where there's a shortage. So people at the top of the economic ladder, at the middle, there's no shortage of housing. We actually have a surplus of housing. But when you get to the lowest income population, that's where we have a surplus. Now, there's all kinds of numbers related to how many units of abandoned housing there is, and I've seen all kinds of numbers. I've seen hundreds of thousands in LA and New York alone. I haven't seen a number that really gives us a total amount of abandoned units around the country. Susie, I don't know if you've seen that.
I don't think there is. I mean, usually you have to rely on the utilities. Like here, we rely on the DWP to provide that information because they know if the utilities are on or off, right? In given units, and how long they've been off to show that they've been abandoned. But we have entire buildings here in downtown LA that are completely vacant. And there's one developer, I'm blanking on his name, but this guy buys entire buildings in New York and Los Angeles, and he keeps them empty. And why does he do that? Because it's just a line on his balance sheet, and it's an asset for him because it's obviously going to appreciate in value every single year. And he uses that building to borrow money against it. He has no intention whatsoever of ever putting anyone in those buildings. And he's just, making bank, as we would say, on these buildings being empty and just borrowing against them. So this is because it's considered an investment and a commodity, as opposed to, housing being a right. I'm basically saying, I'm sorry, but you can't keep these buildings empty. A lot of these folks just come in and buy these buildings for investment purposes, and they never do anything with them.
I think his name is Simon Legree. I got 3 hands up. I can't see whose hands
Harvey,
are up.
there was
Yeah,
something I
Paul?
wanted to say that I didn't get a chance to.
Go ahead, Paul.
I'm with Healthcare for Us, which is an organization. We're on KPFK every Friday morning at 7:30 before Amy Goodman. And we had a veteran on. He was talking about veterans' homelessness. And right now at the Veterans Administration in West Los Angeles, they gave them these storage houses to live in with no toilets or anything. And I mean, it's horrible. And they have to walk, far to go to the bathroom. It's like almost like just putting them in a cell. And the treatment is horrible. And this veteran talked about it. And they're even trying to sell the property. The federal government is trying to sell the property in Westwood. And there's elements in, Healthcare for Us. There's Erica and Gina. Anyway, on KPFK every Friday at 7:30 a.m. in the morning, they're on. But anyway, this veteran was saying, I mean, the conditions are horrible. They want to sell the land because there's some people eyeing that land in LA. There's corruption like you wouldn't believe in this city. And that's something we really need to look at also.
I think they made a movie about it. It's called Chinatown. Right? But well, listen though, this is, the Trump depression is going to open up all these structures. There needs, what you can call it like a free market solution to ending homelessness. Mm-hmm. But there needs to be a master document that we can, I'm sure there must be, I just don't know about it, that we can use as a game plan here.
I did put the Pew stuff in the chat. So if you want to pull that down, it kind of gives you an overview of the work they've been doing.
All right, Steve, do you see that? Steve Caruso?
I'm seeing direct. How long ago?
It was a while back. It was
I probably got it. My clipboard.
It was at 6:43 p.m. when I did.
Well, can you put it back up and let Steve put it up on the screen here?
Sure.
But this is important. I mean, we're in a solution-based situation here. I mean, I never really shopped at Joann's Fabrics, but it was always nice to see it. And there's 80 big box buildings now, and Chase is closing banks all the time. And they're, the conversion to remote work combined with the Trump depression should make plenty of spaces available for conversion.
Did you hang on a second? Let me get rid of this audio.
So anyway,
Donald,
this
I
is
can't
pretty.
access a document.
Let me share my screen. I actually do
Yeah,
have
you
to
can do
jump
that.
to in just a second.
Easier for me.
So actually,
I hate it when people say, well, they can go to shelters. I know these shelters are really, really rough. And certainly if you have a family, you're not going to a shelter.
and as Susie said, that's not a solution to home.
Right. But
let's see.
how do people, when they get into a tiny house, how long do people stay?
Well,
people
so
like
I can't speak to all the programs across the United States, but here they stay until they get permanent housing.
Does anybody consider tiny houses as permanent?
Yes,
people?
that the Austin program I told you about. Can you guys see this document?
Yeah.
And I'll send it to Mike, and hopefully he can share with everybody.
Steve.
Yeah, you could share it, but without editing options too.
Yeah. So this is just it gives you an overview of how many units were available in the 60s and the rise in homelessness, and then it talks about the adaptive reuse today. So it's
as Paul mentioned, I mean, one advantage of micro homes, tiny homes, is you can put a solar panel on the roof.
Yes.
And make them energy self-sufficient. I'm wondering about composting toilets. Do they come with composting toilets?
They come in a couple of ways, and the one that was just described is the one that I don't necessarily agree on being the best option. The ones that don't have individual plumbing and heating. So it is less cost effective to do it that way, to create the unit and then make a commercial bathroom on the property. There are a lot of programs that do it that way. And that does add to the cost. So at that point, the tiny home becomes almost as expensive as a full-sized house. And so it's when the ones that you saw when someone shared, I don't know who was sharing the screen, the ones from China, those are available, and those are a better model because they have all of those things. So it isn't.
Do they have a shower? Do they have a shower in those?
The ones that come with plumbing typically do have a shower, but a lot of them, the ones he was mentioning that the VA had, Susie, correct me if I'm wrong, many of them caught on fire, if I'm not mistaken. There was a fire in some of those units because the building material was a little less durable. Yep. I actually do have to jump. I have a media call.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Donald. You'll come back.
Thank you. Susie, always great to see you.
Susie,
nice to see you, Don.
So Susie, if we can, if we can generate or provide there needs to be a master document here on, solving homelessness in the age of remote work and the Trump depression.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Really great idea.
And
we're seeing look when Sears went out. Okay, so a lot of people have these Sears department store buildings. We have them here. We have one in East LA that are just sitting here vacant. And so, but that's all across the country. So it's not just Joann's, it's every single one, where the department store actually owns the building. Or, there's a whole chain that goes out. That's a lot of those you can convert. Not everything is convertible, but most things you can convert.
Well, there needs to be a master plan on that. I mean, God knows we've been losing big box stores left and right here. And those big box stores have flat roofs, and very little shade usually, making it quite adaptable for renewable energy. And there just needs design and implementation.
Yeah,
that's a small deal. I mean, there are going to be issues of ownership and rent and maintenance, but it's not rocket science.
Yeah, and we have managed to get, in California, we have managed to get a couple of pieces of legislation passed, and we got, some money in the budget for adaptive reuse. And then Jimmy Gomez, who is a Congress member here from California and the head of the Renters Caucus for Congress, has also put in a piece of legislation. We're trying to change it a little because the income level is a little higher than what we would want it to be right now. I mean, I'll give you one statistic. So we have something in California called a housing element, and there's a 7-year look back. And so in our 7-year look back, it showed that based on these RENA goals, these are regional assessments that they do to say, this is how much housing you need at this income level. For the market rate housing, the city of Los Angeles overbuilt. By overbuilt, I mean above the goal, 72,000 units of market rate housing, and underbuilt in the moderate and low income categories. And the lower you go, the less they built. Underbuilt 32,000 units. So in 7 years, we overbuilt 72,000 units and underbuilt for lower income folks. And that's a problem across the entire United States. Then when people say we just need housing, you need to be a lot more specific, because we need housing for low income people. That is the one place where we're not building, and we need to be doing that. It's for me, it's just outrageous that we keep building housing for people who are already housed and people who are unhoused. We're way, way, way behind.
But instead of building now, maybe we should be converting.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe
Well, that's what we're
you know.
saying, because, there's like over 1,500 units that I know the Healthy Housing Foundation has converted here in Los Angeles. And then we know of like other nonprofits who are working on this.
So
But
how did it work out? You say 1,500 units. How
yeah,
successful has the conversion
working
been?
out great. Yeah, it's working out great. But
So
these
does that
were
mean
But these
who
were
owns
not,
them?
yeah, but these were not businesses, right? Like office space. These were units that had been like a former hotel that then had been converted to affordable, and then the landlord just let it go, and people left, and so there were like either no one in the building or 16 people in the building. So all that got converted and updated, but we're also doing office space now. In these really beautiful, beautiful buildings, with marble floors and columns. And, they tend to be older buildings here in LA, but they're just absolutely beautiful, and people have an apartment that they can call their own.
Well, that's the point. Now, do they become condos, or do they retain
No, they're not
does someone
condos, they're
retain?
apartments. Yeah, they're apartments, and the rent is anywhere from $400 to $800 a month.
You get it? You're kidding. What? Really?
I'm not. Yeah, right here in LA. Harvey,
How many
we
square
really
feet?
should.
How many
We're
square feet?
happy.
How many
Well,
square
it
feet
depends
can you
on the
get?
apartment. It depends on the apartment, but it's usually from 300 to 500 square feet.
It sounds like Sluggo, like you're getting your stuff packed up and ready to move into one of these units. But
But we can do a tour. We do tours of these
Well,
places.
you should make a film of a tour. You should make
Yeah,
a video and
yeah,
because people don't know this. People look. There's a whole class of people in this country, middle class people, who look at the homeless as a separate race.
yep. I
They're
know.
people. There's a creature out there called a homeless person, and they're treated like Untermenschen.
And
And so
Sluggo, if I could get in on that point that you're raising, I think that you've done a really good job talking about potential sources for housing. I think the bottom line is there's plenty out there. There's more than enough potential housing to solve the problem. What we lack is the political will and leadership to make it happen. And thanks to Susie, we're making some headway on that. But we've got a long way to go. The problem isn't that we don't have potential housing. The problem is that housing policy is being driven by people who are afraid of homeless, unhoused people, and complain about them and complain to their local politicians, who think it's a better idea to drive them into some other jurisdiction rather than doing, as Susie pointed out, a cost-saving measure of getting them into permanent housing, which would actually save money. And then the next level is that many of these people are working and they're about to lose their job because they've
Right.
lost their home. If we can get them a permanent solution to their housing situation, a lot of them will become, well, a lot of them are already contributing to the economy, but they'd be able to do so more so. And those that are currently a drain on local resources would be able to flip around and contribute to the localities. But
Right.
rather than taking a long-term view, what they're getting is people complaining, oh, there's a bunch of unhoused people who've set up an encampment near me, or one of them yelled at me when I was going to the opera or something. And unfortunately, there is an element in our community that is very intolerant of unhoused people. And they are unfortunately driving policy on this rather than logic,
But there's
reason, and dollars and cents.
But there's a magic moment here because we have all this vacated square footage because of the bad economy, and because of which is coming full force now, and because of the conversion to remote work. And so all this square office footage and all these big box stores like Joann's.
Oh yeah, no, with the supply is there,
businesses.
Sluggo, you're right. The supply is there. We've got NIMBYs, and we've also got, people who are snobs.
Yes, but we don't have a master plan. There needs to be a physical master plan for converting this square footage, and then the home must become an asset because the people who own this square footage are going to need occupants.
That's right.
And so that's the economic flipping point that we're at now, right? Am I wrong about that?
Well, Vienna, Austria has adopted a plan that's been adopted in a lot of other places of social housing, where they realize that the cost benefit analysis is find people homes so they can contribute to the economy rather than kind of drive them around and push them away. And you're absolutely right that we do need a comprehensive plan. I think that what Susie's talking about is working out legislation with a member of Congress, and then there's this renters caucus in Congress. We need to make sure that they're doing it the right way. And they probably won't get it through this federal government for a couple of years at least, but California could definitely do it. Light a fire under good old Gavin Newsom and see if he'll do something good for a change.
This is a market situation. If this becomes a market-driven situation where the homeless are viewed as assets, and where square footage is viewed as a stranded asset, that's
You're absolutely right, Sluggo.
It's
You're absolutely right.
This stuff is stranded assets.
Yep. The key is that, like you said, a lot of people don't want unhoused people around. They've been stigmatized, and we need to do public education, like we're doing here, to teach people that people are assets. They are not,
Susie,
pests or whatever.
But here's the question: local resistance in a place like a vacant big box building, like an abandoned Walmart or Joann's or a bank that's in a downtown. Are you going to do you encounter the same kind of resistance to converting those buildings as you do to building low cost housing in neighborhoods?
Typically, no. So for some of the stuff that we've done, which is, converting hotels or motels into permanent housing, you don't get a lot of resistance because the hotel is already there. So you don't have to go to the planning committee and talk about what type of housing this is going to be. The structure is already there, so it's much easier to get around NIMBYism when you already have an existing building or infrastructure. I don't think communities tend to like blight either, so you get around it a little more. If you're building something new, so it's just ground up, that's where a lot of the problems lie, right? Because the plans get out there. For some reason, you have to reveal to these planning commissions if you're building for low-income communities so that they know it's affordable. And then typically for people who know that there's housing coming in for low-income communities, they just don't want those folks in their community or think that they have a say in that. So they really feel that they can discriminate against somebody based on their socioeconomic status. But what's even worse is that there are developers who create market rate housing and they leave half of the building empty. And so we've asked some of these landlords, like, why are you leaving, this building half empty instead of renting it? And they have told us that they can make enough of a profit with their market rate housing, and that the average cost of a 2-bedroom in LA now is $3,742 a month. They can make enough of a profit renting out half of their building, and they would rather do that than bring in lower income people to mix with the higher income people that they are renting out to in their building. So they are specifically basically saying that like their housing is only for high income folks and they will not let lower income people in.
Unbelievable. Dr. Nancy, and then Steve, and then we're almost done.
I just want
Susie,
to
it's great to have you.
I just want to emphasize what Susie said in a little bit different words. I see we have 4 populations. We have we have the homeless, some of them, and they're not all the same. But we have the activists, which are everyone on this call. But then we have all these do-gooders, activists who want to fix it. And we have all these complainers in our neighborhoods who are NIMBYs. But the driving problem here is financial. They still make money by buying property and letting it sit, by not filling these spaces. And I don't think do-gooders trying to make rules to help the situation. It's more like butting our head against the wall. But we need to change the laws that allow these investments of gazillionaires to buy up property in this world and let it sit.
Right. Very well said. Steve, and then we're almost done.
May I speak quickly, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Mimi.
Okay,
Go ahead,
I'm so sorry. I got a phone call organizing this Dolores Huerta thing. Did you all mention in Berlin? In the city of Berlin, I believe it was went on their ballot to seize unused property. And that made international news. And so I remember reading about that. And I've mentioned that to local officials. So I have to say unofficially, they are looking at that. So thank you so much. That's all I wanted to say. That's why I wanted to jump in for the past 10
all
minutes.
Right, thank
So
you for that. Very
everyone for organizing.
All right, Steve Caruso, go ahead. Anybody else? We're going to end in 6 minutes.
Yeah, I was homelessness. Homeless for about 3 years, off and on. Traveled around the country, lived in shelters in various big cities, Philadelphia, New York, New Orleans, Louisiana. Yeah, I was treated quite nicely by the local people, just picked me up hitchhiking. Of course, there was bad times too. I'm not going to mention some of that. But generally, all in all, it was a great experience in my youth. And then I came to Columbus, Ohio, and worked at Friends of the Homeless here as a maintenance guy, doing construction work and so forth. And they had properties in the neighborhood nearby that were being rehabbed, and they had a guy on staff who was training the homeless people to do house construction and rehab these houses. And what the state of that is right now, I don't know. But this guy was a master plumber from LA. And he used to hang out with the lead singer of Three Dog Night and so forth. So, I mean, there's a great movement in Columbus. And when I came here, I was just so impressed with everything that they were doing.
Hey, Steve, was the guy named Jeremiah, and was he a bulldog?
Yeah, all of that, all the above.
All right, well, listen, you guys, we're done. It's about to be 4:20. Everybody's got to go toke up. Susie, it's really great to have you.
Thank you.
And I know I'm not saying anything new, but this is a moment where with the huge crash of the commercial real estate industry. I mean, this is a big deal. And with all these big box stores going out of business, dollar stores and all that, and banks closing their branches, the confluence of vacated commercial square footage with the need to house people, to me, is very interesting, and I'd love to see more on it. So There you go. All right, everybody. It's 4:17. Those of you in Santa Monica, come on down to the Lemley for the 7 o'clock showing of the Naked Hippie movie. It looks like we might actually sell out. Nancy, I'll see you there. I promise I will be fully clothed, so that's all good. And there we are. And next week we're going to talk about more of this. Susie, it was really great having you on with Donald.
Thank you. Yeah.
What a 1-2 punch, and we'll be back in. Steve Caruso, thanks for engineering. Mike Hersh, thanks for co-hosting. Maya Reeson, good to see everybody. Tatanka, Paul Newman, and we'll see you all next week, everybody. All
Thank
right.
you.
No news
and no homelessness.
You got it. And fill that commercial real estate. There has got to be. We need Milton Friedman now to do the formula. All right, you guys.